Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me for the last night of Monsoon Awareness Week. Today, we are going to talk about flash flooding. But before we get into the thick of it and I start asking our panelists all those important questions, I want to introduce everyone, starting with Clay Anderson. Clay, you're a forecaster in Albuquerque. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Perfect. And then in Tucson, we have Jim. Jim, I didn't get your last name. What was your last name again?
Jim Meyer.
Jim Meyer, okay. And then we have John Fawcett, my boss in El Paso.
How are you doing?
And then a fellow Aggie and also a TV meteorologist, Jorge Torres, up in Albuquerque.
Hello.
How
Howdy.
are you? Howdy.
Doing well.
Then next
Very
to
good. It's been a little busy up here.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't wait to hear all about it then. Next to him is Ken Waters in Phoenix, WCM there. Ken, hi.
Hi there.
And next to him is Reed Woolcock in Las Vegas. Hot there today, I saw.
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, very hot here.
And then my partner in crime and my mentor, Tim Bryce, also a forecaster in the El Paso office with me. Tim. And then last but not least, we have another Tim in Flagstaff. Tim, what was your last name? I didn't catch it.
Stefan.
Okay, well, Tim, Stefan. So let's get started, everyone. Like I said, today is the last day of Monsoon Awareness Week, and we're going to talk everything about flash flooding. Very excited about this. I think what I wanted to start with was, Jorge, can you explain what a flash flood is to everyone?
Well, a flash flood is when you get a thunderstorm, especially in places like New Mexico, where the rain comes down really fast in a short amount of time and can just come down and impact you with little to no warning.
Oh, okay. So lots of rain, quickly moving, and not a lot of warning. Okay, great. So then I'm just going to throw this out to anybody, maybe Jim in Tucson, maybe you can answer. What's the difference then between a flash flood and then those floods that we see like in East Texas, those big river floods?
Well, we're just not used to seeing the water around here. The flash floods will occur at a moment's notice, and they'll occur with any given thunderstorm as long as the atmosphere is moist enough. And it can cover a large area, it can cover a small area. But even when I'm talking about a large area, I'm just talking about, a few blocks or that type of thing. The river flooding you're talking about in Texas is a much larger area, and it's kind of a longer term thing.
So flash floods more short term, fast happening, and those big floods that we always see that like seem to occur in Houston, more of a river flooding event, longer term, more water. Okay, let's see what we're getting here. So then, John, can you answer why do flash floods seem to happen more in the southwestern part of the United States than anywhere else?
Well, that's our predominant type of flooding here. I mean, we can get river floods, but they're rare. It's because our soil is built for it, doesn't want to soak in the water, it just wants to run right off. And our main rainfall is during the summer with thunderstorms that drop the rain rapidly, so it doesn't have time to soak in. And our terrain's built for it as well. You get the arroyos or dry washes, and the terrain sloping. Everything just wants to move that water downhill rapidly. And so, yeah, we're built for flash flooding. And even though it takes maybe half the rainfall to produce a flash flood in the Southwest, as let's say Houston or San Antonio, it's still quite dangerous.
Okay, so I grew up in the Southwest. I only really know about flash flooding because that's what I've always been accustomed to. Can maybe Tim out in Flagstaff, can you give us some safety tips that we kind of teach everyone all the time of how to maybe avoid or deal with flash floods?
Well, the most important thing, especially if you're in a vehicle, is to, our slogan is turn around, don't drown. You never know. Any type of flowing water, you don't know what's under it. There could be a big hole in the road. It's just never a good idea to drive through any type of water, and especially in our area, slot canyons, flash flooding. You don't want to be hiking in those areas when there's thunderstorm potential. So those are just a few of the safety tips that we like to promote.
Tim, can you kind of explain your area forecasting, like give us an idea of what your area is, what cities you cover, what area?
So we're located just outside of Flagstaff in Belmont, and we cover down to areas such as Sedona and as far north as the Utah border. Our terrain is we're located on what's called the Mogollon Rim, and rises to about 7,300 feet. And then we also have a lot of lower valley areas, and with Phoenix bordering to our south. So it's a very, very topography is very diverse, and a very difficult forecasting area.
Sounds like it. So do you get a lot of snow up there?
We do actually. Flagstaff averages about 100 inches a year.
And how are flash flood and snow correlated? Is there any correlation?
What was that?
How is snow and flash flooding correlated? Is there any correlation there?
Not particularly. I mean, most of our snow is gone. We do have some mountain peaks that are around 12, 13,000 feet and still some snow on them, but our snow is pretty much gone.
So snow melt doesn't cause any flash flooding or anything like that?
Correct.
Very interesting. So Clay, in Albuquerque, I have a question. We have a lot of fires going on in Albuquerque right now, and we talked about earlier in my office, we were talking about burn scars. Can you kind of describe what a burn scar is and how flash flooding and burn scars are correlated?
Yeah, they're strongly correlated. In fact, when we're dealing with burn scars, it's really about how fresh the scar is, which can determine the amount of runoff that we get. For example, if you've got a forest fire that burns really, really hot and it chars the soil and kind of cakes the landscape, it forms almost like a barrier to where rain can't soak in like it normally would. So what does it do? It runs off, and generally speaking, we have burn scars where we have forests in the mountains, so we're talking about significant slope. So burn scars pose a significant threat to safety because of that. Now, we've been dealing with a lot of burn scars in New Mexico over the years. Some burn scars are older, and as they get older, they have less runoff than the more fresh burn scars. So every summer we're dealing with that during the monsoon, and that's something that we'll be dealing with for some time to come.
Yeah, especially with all the fires out in the Gila right now, it's pretty significant. We may see some new burn scars this season. So out to Phoenix we go. It's warm in Phoenix. It's going to get warmer in Phoenix as the week continues. But can you tell me of any flash flooding that happened in Phoenix and how it happened and how you had to recover after it?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things we have to worry about are the low water crossings. We have a lot of issues with those. They're just simple little roads where there's no bridge over the natural stream flow, and all too often, particularly during the monsoon, those stream flows become really get a lot of water and a lot of flow going through them. And inevitably, every year we have a number of rescues out here, and some of them are pretty dramatic. I remember a couple of them from either last year or the year before, or it's on local TV live, helicopter shots showing helicopters trying to go down and pick people off of the top of cars and that sort of thing. So that's one of the big threats here. And also, I want to tag it on to, you mentioned a little bit before about the burn scar area. Yeah. Well, as it turns out, there's one in particular that we're dealing with right now, a potential situation, and that's up in the mountains above Globe, which is kind of the eastern part of our area. We had the Pinal fire just a few weeks ago, and I think just in the last week or so, it's been contained. And a lot of concern right there where all we need is a little bit of thunderstorm activity from the monsoon up there over the mountain, and we could get a lot of that debris flow coming down and going right down into the city of Globe. So we're really concerned about that, and that's one thing that actually in the last couple of days it's been dominating a lot of my time.
Oh, so what are you doing? Are you working with emergency managers? How are you protecting the people of Globe?
Yeah, well, we're definitely working with emergency managers, including the Forest Service, the county, and the city folks. And also, we're scheduling a public meeting where we're trying to meet with the whole public and let them know the threat. And we're also working with GIS people to try to identify what properties are most susceptible, because we need to track where the potential flows could go. So it's quite an effort, and it's something we're always very concerned about, because a lot of times we don't have a lot of warning on these. The flows, once they start, we have to act fast and get that warning out.
Wow, it sounds like a lot of effort by a whole team of forecasters. So Reed in Las Vegas, do you guys get flash flooding there?
We do. We like to say that we live on the edge out here, because we really do. We live on the edge of the monsoon. We're not in it all the time. We kind of have these ebbs and flows where we'll have it for a few days, then it'll back off, and it'll come back in, the next week. So when we deal with it, it's generally 2-3 days at a time, and then it calms down. But we definitely do get the monsoon storms, and we have quite a gradient of impacts across our forecast areas, since we cover everywhere from Mojave County, Arizona, all the way to the Sierra Nevada. So the Sierra doesn't really see that much monsoon activity, but it does happen occasionally. But it can vary widely across our whole forecast area.
Reed, real quick, can you point out on the map that Tim's showing where you are and what your forecasting zone covers?
Yeah, so we're VEF, so we're all of southern Nevada, northwest Arizona, and southeast California. It's about 70,000 square miles of terrain, and it includes the lowest point, Death Valley in the continental U.S., and the highest point in Mount Whitney in the continental U.S. So we have a lot of varied terrain here that we have to contend with.
That's a cool fact. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Cool. So Jorge, you deal with you're part of the media, and you deal with a lot of people every day watching your forecast. So what do you tell the public about flash flooding?
Well, today actually, yesterday in fact, our very own Eddie Garcia, one of our forecasters, did a little segment on flash flooding and how people can stay safe. One of the key issues here in Albuquerque and much in New Mexico is staying away from arroyos. That is always a concern. Whenever you get a big storm up on the Sandias or the Manzanos or any significant mountain chain, and that rain runs off into the arroyos, and a lot of people tend to just wander around, even kids, they're skateboarding, and we tell them, stay away from arroyos. There's even a program here with the city of Albuquerque called Ditch the Ditches, and there's little ditch monsters that try to scare off the kids and all that, just kind of bring awareness. So that is one thing that we try to harp on here within the local media.
Oh, cool. I really like that. Ditch the ditches. Keep people out of their arroyos. Can you explain exactly what an arroyo is in case someone's watching that's not from the Southwest or from the area that we're talking about today?
Okay, yeah, very good question. So there are two types of arroyos. The ones that most people here to think of are the man-made ones, concrete barriers that help the runoff from the storms and the mountains run into the river. And you see them all the time across the city. Once you see them, you know what they're there for, but a lot of people just kind of use them to hang out.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, which they shouldn't, by the way.
Yeah, I was just thinking. So I'm from El Paso, like I said, and I can remember, John, in 2006, August 1st, there was a big flooding. Was that a true flash flood? Can you kind of explain the scenario and what happened?
Well, initially it was a flash flood, big time. We had a unique situation where we were under a deep plume of moisture coming out of Mexico, directly under the monsoon flow. And we also had a weak upper low slip into that plume. And the way the wind profile was set up, you had storm after storm after storm forming and coming up the northern side of the Franklin Mountain Range, which divides El Paso, splits the city almost in half. You ended up with about 6 to 8 inches of rainfall along the Franklin Mountains. That's the worst possible place, because what's it going to do? It's just going to run off into the city on either side, and it caused a lot of damage, $250 million worth of damage. And that was back on August 1st, 2006, in the midst of our wettest monsoon on record. And our own Tim Bryce, our very own Tim Bryce, was actually probably the key person in that event, because he was staging all the questions, answering everything from the media from our operations area, while the rest of us were trying to get the warnings out and things like that. And Tim was the hydrology focal point at the time, and he was also able to provide lots of information on this. But as this continued, the flash flooding, which was the most dangerous part, it lasted, the rainfall lasted long enough so that it actually contributed to what we call river flooding, where the Rio Grande started to get out of its banks, which is not common because it's leveed as you go down through El Paso. And so that was a very interesting day. Yeah, the longer term, we start to issue aerial flood warnings instead of flash flood warnings after you get hours and hours into it.
Wow. So can you describe this picture?
It's very wet.
Yes, it is very wet.
Yeah, and some of these pictures are actually looking across into our neighboring Mexican city, Juarez, and they suffered quite a bit of damage too. And there was one concern. There was an earthen dam up on the Juarez Mountains that just about gave out, and that would have really messed up downtown El Paso and neighboring Juarez. We just barely escaped that.
Wow, what a concern. That's kind of scary. Jim, can you talk about cars and flash flooding? I know it doesn't take much water to move a car. Just how much does it take?
I'm sorry, did you say Jim or Tim?
Jim, I'm sorry.
That's
yes.
right. It doesn't take much, just 6 inches, and you could be on your way in a direction you weren't exactly expecting. And it changes so quickly, and it's so deceptive because people are used to traveling over water. We have low water crossings and fair weather crossings of washes. Instead of arroyos, we call them washes up here in southeast Arizona, but they're essentially the same thing.
So you have one that has water that you can also use during the day to drive on when there's no water?
Exactly.
Wow.
Right. You go right down into the dip, and you're safe 99.9% of the time, and then there'll be a wash, like we have the Alamo Wash here in Tucson. There's a wall of water that comes down the wash, and it starts to not only cover the roadway, but in some situations it can erode the roadway under there. So you look at the water and you think, well, that's only a few inches. My truck can take it. Maybe there's some erosion going on under that as well. And instead of 2 inches of water, maybe you've got 6 or 7. And that's when it really starts to get kind of dicey. So we put out warnings, and the local officials are really good about posting places where you shouldn't cross and try to put barriers. Don't go around those barriers just because you're eyeballing it and you're used to it. It could be a lot worse than you think it is.
So what you're saying is the big SUV cannot go through the water?
Exactly. Just don't go through the water.
I agree. Turn around, don't drown. Always a safe move. Ken, what about Phoenix? You guys have you talked about low water crossings earlier. What do you guys do to block those? Do you work with officials to block them?
Yeah, it varies by the community. This is certainly something that all the communities around here are aware of. The emergency manager, public works folks, and so on. And they tend to try to get the barricades out as quickly as possible. Some of them are a little more like nuisance ones, like the picture that you showed there. But we've got some areas that have been identified that are especially problematic during the monsoon, and we know about this. We've had repeat incidents of it, and there's actually a classic video. I don't have it queued up here, but a classic video from about 8 years ago, I think, where just a few miles from where I'm speaking right now, there was a situation where there was some fast flowing water over one of the streets in Apache Junction, and a vehicle came up on it, a small sedan, and a lady with a baby, and decided that she saw some other vehicles get across it, so it should be no problem. So she started to proceed through it, and the force of the water just picked up that car and basically diverted it off of the road, and actually rammed it into a little footbridge. And the amazing thing is there was a helicopter overhead shooting the whole thing. As it turned out, it was in the morning, and it's some amazing footage, and we use it a lot for outreach kind of just show people, like on our spotter presentations and our safety presentations, hey, this is not what you want to do, and this is why.
Very good. But they were safe? The woman and the baby were okay?
Yeah, the video actually shows that a passerby happened to be on the bridge and actually lifted the lady and the baby out of the car onto the bridge. It's pretty some pretty remarkable footage. I'm sure it's available on YouTube if you just search for.
Tim's looking for it.
yeah. There you go.
So Tim, that's not looking for the video. The other Tim. Some of the videos I see, the sky behind the flash flooding is blue. I really don't understand. Can you explain how the sky could be blue, but we're still having flooding miles later, away from the darkness?
Well, you have all these streams, and so you get water, heavy rains. You get 3 inches of rain in 30 minutes or an hour, and that water's all got to go somewhere, so it flows downstream. And you could not be getting rain at the time, but you're getting the water from the storm to your north or your east. So just because it's not raining at your location doesn't mean that you cannot experience flash flooding.
Oh, very good. So that's another safety tip. Is this the one you're talking about, Ken? No, this looks like it says Tucson, Phoenix.
Actually, that's not the one, but that's a good one as well.
What is that one?
Yeah, a bad one, depending on how you want to look at it. Yeah, the last couple of years we've had some really remarkable flooding events where the interstates, Interstate 10 and Interstate 17, have gone underwater, and we've had cars floating along just like that. In particular, it seems to have been common with these remnant tropical cyclone events that we've got in the last couple of years. So just dropping a whole lot of water in a short period of time, and the infrastructure just can't handle it.
Wow, that's a lot of water.
Yeah, but keep looking for the Apache Junction video. It's really good.
Okay, keep looking, Mr. Tim, please. So Clay, you and Jorge are in the same forecasting area. I want to talk about Clay, put out the flash flood warnings and the flash flood watches. Can you explain the difference? And then Jorge, can you explain after him how you pass that on to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally speaking, we issue a flash flood watch. It could be up to 2, maybe 2.5 days ahead of time, when we're confident that all the conditions will be present for flash flooding. Now, that doesn't mean flash flooding will occur. It just means that all the conditions are present to produce flash flooding. Then what happens on a shorter time scale, hopefully it's been preceded by a flash flood watch, but not always. We'll issue flash flood warnings when flash flooding is imminent or will occur shortly. And those are, generally speaking, short time scale events.
So first the watch and then the warning.
That's correct.
Okay, and then Jorge, I know that Clay sends these out because I work in a very similar office as him, so I know the background, and I know that we put these out and people can get them on the internet. But how do you send these out to your population?
All right, so once the watches and warnings have been issued, we'll go and send them 2 ways. There is either the emergency or the EAS system, obviously, that goes on TV. So the crawl that you all see on TV, that goes out. And obviously, if we're on the air, I'll talk about that and also share it on social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Now, if it's a flash flood warning, depending on where it is, I may cut in. If it's right, say, in the heart of Albuquerque, even with the flood advisory, which is, of course, at nuisance flooding, I'll cut in, whether it be Albuquerque, Santa Fe, or some of the larger populations, and tell everyone, seek higher ground. If you're in those flood-prone areas, get out of there. Stay away from arroyos, of course, something we always harp on. So that's how I relay the message once the watches or warnings have been issued.
Wow, okay. So we've worked together as a team, which is really great. We have a great partnership with the media, and I can tell you and Clay have an awesome relationship up at Albuquerque. So I kind of want to go back. Maybe we can go to Reed and ask again, what if you're driving at night? What are some good safety tips? And lots of rain is happening. Flash warning's now gone out. Jorge's put it out. It's on the radio. What should you do if it's nighttime and flash flood warning is imminent and it's happening now?
I mean, if you come across a flooded roadway, obviously you want to stop, not drive through it, and wait for the water to recede. Obviously, you want to also check the road before you drive over it to make sure that it is, in fact, still intact. but you've got to be extra vigilant at night. I mean, the nighttime flash flooding is some of the most dangerous stuff because you can't see the water coming. And there have definitely been cases where, people are in the middle of the low water crossing and the water comes across while they're in the low water crossing, and you just don't want to have that happen. So you've got to be really vigilant about where you're driving, and stay put if you encounter any water at all, really.
Wow, good. So good advice. So at night, definitely pay attention because you can't tell. I mean, much like ice, you cannot tell what's on the roadway. So, Mr. Tim, I wanted to come to you, not Tim in Flagstaff, but the Tim doing the videos, Tim Bryce. Do you have any comments, maybe some questions from Facebook Live? You guys, we are streaming on Facebook Live and on YouTube. So I forgot to say this because I was really excited and wanted to get into the meat of it all. You can ask a question on Twitter, hashtag Monsoon 2017. So, Mr. Bryce, do you have anything for us?
So far coming in on Facebook, we've had actually Jorge has a lot of fans.
Ooh,
we got Eduardo and Ashley all saying, "Hey, Jorge." Susan's in here from Berlin. Mary Torres is saying hello from Albuquerque. But like Marissa said, if you got a question, post it on Facebook Live, post it in the YouTube chat, or tweet at us at hashtag Monsoon 2017, and we'll try to get the question. I did get one question it was from a fellow Weather Service employee. He was on the call yesterday. Basically, Jim over in Phoenix was asking, do people respect, lightning as a killer more than flooding, or do they respect them both equally? Do people give more respect to one or the other? And anybody can answer if they want to hop in there.
John, you're muted. Sorry. You're still muted,
John. You have to unmute yourself.
At the top.
Well, who muted me in the first place? I didn't do it. No.
So, John, is lightning, do people respect flash flooding like they respect other things like lightning, tornadoes, hurricanes?
Well, what I was going to say is neither flash flooding or lightning are respected enough. People are no-brainer when it comes to tornado or hurricane or things like that. But lightning, flash flooding, and heat are very underrated. Lightning, one of the things that keeps people out there is the beauty of lightning. Photographers, and I can be guilty of this, and just, the flash boom, hey, this is really cool. And then flash flooding, it's the superiority complex we get behind the wheel, thinking, oh, I can drive through that. Or if you've done it before and made it through, that could be your number one enemy because you may not do it again. So I think both of those could get a little more respect for people because lightning used to be the number one killer long ago. It's dropped quite a bit, but it still kills too many. And flash flooding, especially among the flood victims, still killing too many folks in the long-term average.
I can't help but agree. I know we talked yesterday. Here, I was just going to ask you, Tim, to bring this up. So this is a 30, I believe, year average in the yellow, and in the red, it's weather fatalities just for last year. And you can see flood had 126 just in 2016. So pretty considerable. The number one killer is still heat, and we talked about that a couple of days ago. But flooding, John, you're right. It's still right up there. It's number 2 killer, it looks like, which is really sad. People definitely aren't respecting low water crossings and flash flood warnings and things like that enough. I guess I'm trying to think. I wanted to kind of still go over some safety tips. So maybe, Clay, you could give us a safety tip that you kind of push out there to your forecasting area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly people need to be cognizant and aware of the forecast, what's going on. I mean, you've got to have access to those warnings and those advisories. Otherwise, your awareness level's down. You're not able to make good decisions. I saw a statistic where an average of 66% of all flash flood deaths occur in vehicles. So obviously, a good thing not to do would be to jump in your car and go driving when a flash flood warning is in effect, as an example.
Very good. And then maybe Jim, you could give us, I think we already came to you with one, maybe John, you could give us one that we use in El Paso a lot.
Well, in El Paso, it's kind of like anywhere else. Turn around, don't drown, obviously, is a slogan we try to get across. But it's the thing about underestimating, I can't emphasize that enough. If there's just regular water hanging around, that's bad enough because you have the buoyancy force that wants to lift the base of your vehicle. But you add flash flooding and the lateral power of moving water, and people just underestimate the depth of water needed to sweep your vehicle off. But I think in general, just stay away from flooded areas. You can wait. How about the old days when people just waited until the water came down? Then no, we're too busy today. We're afraid we're going to get fired by our boss. Well, you know what? Your life's more important than that. Your family needs you. And I do have to share this one story we had from our area. There was this lady who lived on a ranch. She was coming back from Albuquerque, one of our weather spotters, and she lived in a place south of Hillsboro, New Mexico. And she was, traveling towards her ranch, and there was some heavy rain in the mountains to the west, and she noticed the arroyo was filled. And her ranch was a mile or so on the other side of this arroyo. Oh, how tempting to try to cross. You're almost home. She went all the way back to Hillsboro, all the way east to Interstate 10, all the way south, and came back around this huge loop and got home safely. Oh, a poster child for flash flood safety.
Yeah, she is. So she definitely took turn around, don't drown very seriously. I like that lady a lot. Very smart woman. I like it. So Tim Bryce, were you able to find the video, the Apache video yet?
I was not able to find it, and with my bandwidth here at the house, I'm not going to probably be able to pull up a video. So I was looking for stills, and it looks like Apache Junction is kind of popular for flooding. I saw several different flood rescues from Apache Junction. So, and that's one of the things that's kind of interesting. I've stressed, like John mentioned, I was the hydrologic focal point for our office. And one of the things that I did was go around and survey all of our low water crossings. And one of my themes has always been, if you know where the flood's going to be, we should be aware of that point. So what we've gone in and we highlight all the low water crossings that we're aware of, computer system, and we can overlay the radar, and then we overlay the basin, because the low water crossing is one thing, where that's what water is going to end up, but we actually highlight the basin that all the water that falls or as rain will fall into that basin, and then it ends up at that low water crossing. And it gives our forecasters just a great way to visualize. They can see that this rain is really filling in this basin, and that means that down, and it could be as short as like a mile away, and it could be as far away as like we mentioned 10-20 miles away, that water is going to flow all the way down, and it's going to cause a flood at those low water crossings. And it's just a way for our forecasters to kind of get a heads up that we've got a problem in this basin, and when we do, the water is going to end up at this point. So knowing where for us as meteorologists where your problem areas are is important, but also for people, you live around your area, where there's some flooding and issues like that. And like John just mentioned with that lady, she knew that she had a low water crossing right outside of her ranch, but she still had to go all the way around. So being aware, and again, we mentioned it yesterday on Lightning, take your own precautions. If road that's flooded, because you never know, like we talked about, if the water's washed away the road or just how deep it is. It's very important to be cognizant of all of those things.
So being aware of the weather and being aware of your surroundings, all very, very important parts of flash flooding. Reed, Tim brings up an interesting point. We as meteorologists, even Jorge, understand what we're doing when we're putting out flash flood warnings and watches, but can you kind of give the people watching some hints as to how we forecast for these kinds of things, what tools we use to decide, okay, we need a flash flood, warning or watch?
Right. So it's a multi-part question, right? Because we have the days leading up to the actual event, and then we have the event itself. So In the days leading up to the event, we're looking for, well, especially out here, we're looking for that ebb and flow of the moisture. Where is the moisture going to be? And then what are the other ingredients that we're looking for? So for thunderstorms, we're looking for things like lift, instability, wind shear, things like that, to determine where and how strong the thunderstorms are going to be. And based off of that, we'll create a forecast and we'll determine, okay, this is going to be the area that we're most concerned about, on Friday or whatever. Then the day of, we're using all of the tools in our toolbox. We're using alert gauges. We're using radar. We're using satellite. Satellite's going to be really interesting this year with the new GOES 16. Some people may know it as GOES R. There's been a lot of advancements in the satellite technology and the tools that are available to us there. So it should be a pretty exciting year for meteorologists to really use those things. And all of our, we have a bunch of stuff that we can look at to determine on the day of, where is the moisture right now? We have all these moisture sensors all over the place. Where is it at? Where is the hot spot for today? Yeah, so up on the screen there's an example of radar. So we're looking at that. We're looking at the evolution. Is it one big storm that's just going to drop a whole bunch of rain in 10, 15 minutes? Or is this multiple smaller storms that keep going over the same area over and over and over again? We call that training when that happens. Either way, you can get very significant flash flooding out of it. There's a whole host of tools that we use both before and during an event.
Wow. I mean, I know from my experience, because I work in our weather service office, so we use So Now, but it was a behind the scenes look from Reed, what we do. Ken, I've seen pictures now of what Mr. Bryce has been bringing up, and it looks like Phoenix is a hotspot. Can you give us an idea of the perfect scenario or the worst case scenario for Phoenix when a flash flood sets up? What are the conditions, and then what happens?
Sure. Boy, it's a matter of trying to decide which one to give you, because I can think of several. Maybe one of the classic ones with the biggest impact that we've had recently was about 3 years ago. We had a situation where we had multiple remnants of tropical cyclones coming up, still in the monsoon season, as we call it. Runs through the end of September, but kind of more in the transition stage. Like September, we usually start to dry out a little bit. But all that moisture came flowing up over the Gulf of California and up into Southwest Arizona and on into Phoenix. And some of the thunderstorms from that moisture just sat over an area just to the south of downtown Phoenix. It's a mountain range that we know as South Mountain. And it just sat out there, and I seem to recall numbers like 7 or 8 inches of rain in just a couple of hours, and that'll pretty much cause damage just about anywhere in the country if you get that amount of water in that short a period of time. And we had many houses flooded, and it was quite a disaster. So basically, that's the formula. Anytime you have a lot of water in a short period of time, you're looking at flash flooding.
Hence the word flash. I think I'm in the office, so I think I know I have better bandwidth than Mr. Tim Bryce. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. Hopefully it works. Let me see if I can show the video that you're talking about, and then you can maybe walk us through it here. It's from Arizona 15. Is this one you're talking about? No.
No, that's not, but that's a good one too.
So explain this one since I have it up. I got that part down.
And actually, that's very good timing because just about 2 weeks ago, me and our new hydrologists and a couple of the forecasters all went out to that exact location right there, because we know that is a very flood vulnerable area, and there's that mobile home park there, and we were parked right across the street and saw where that wash is that was like right over it, and basically just the water goes over the banks and just flows right into that mobile home park. And so, tied into what someone else had said a little earlier, we're trying to map those kind of locations out. This is part of what's known as the Weeks Wash in Apache Junction, and we know it's a problem area, and it's just about every year during the monsoon we're going to have some issues out there. So But that's a good one as well.
Wow, so people haven't left that mobile park? They just keep staying there? Even after you guys tell them?
Yeah, we the public works people know about it. They they're prepared to put barricades up pretty quickly. But yeah, that whole mobile home park, as I recall, got totally flooded. We were shown some pictures of some of the damage where the water was. It looked like it had gotten into some of the mobile homes. So it's a very vulnerable area. And I might add that the park was built before a lot of the. I'm going to say we got smarter, if you will, about working around these dry washes. So that sometimes is an issue where maybe they weren't as stringent on zoning and so on. So it's just something that we're going to have to deal with on an ongoing basis.
Wow, that's pretty scary stuff there. Jorge, I know you on a more personal level, so I know that you come from East Texas. And I know where you went to school. So I was wondering if flash flooding occurs, not just in the Southwest, does it occur other places?
It does. It occurs. I'm actually from Central Texas, technically the Austin area, but close enough. And they've been dealing with floods over the past few years. They had the Memorial Day floods not too long ago where the Colorado River overflowed its banks and flowed into the city. So it can happen in areas that even do experience a lot of rain. But what I've been noticing over the past few years, especially in Texas, is that it's been very feast or famine. You're going to go for long stretches of time with drought, little to no rain, extreme heat. And then all of a sudden you just get one good weekend of very heavy rainfall. And that causes that flash flooding to return. And a lot of people tend to not only be caught off guard, but just think that you've been in drought for so long that you don't have to worry about it if it rains a lot. Well, in fact, it still floods.
So even after a drought, it can still flash flood because the soil, like John was saying earlier, just can't absorb it that fast. And here's a flood that the Memorial Day flood that you were talking about. Mr. Bryce brought it up, and wow, that's a big flood. Oh, I remember this one now. That I see the stadium. So, and I think some people actually perished.
Yeah, that is House Park, where I believe Austin High School plays,
right.
And obviously not that day.
Wow. Oh, very sad. So Jim, you're in Tucson. Can you kind of give us a scenario of how you guys get moisture and how you get flash flooding? If it kind of seems like you're a little bit landlocked like the rest of us.
Yeah, we get our moisture mainly from two sources, both the Gulf of California and the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of California normally comes up in little surges of moisture that come up from the south and build up over a few days. And the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes we'll get these systems that come in from the east and southeast that track across northern Mexico and draw up some moisture, especially into our eastern areas like Cochise County over there by Douglas and such. These moisture sources will filter through the rest of the state and further deeper into the Southwest. And I remember, I think Las Vegas mentioned that they're on the edge of the monsoon. And I think all of us are at some point or another. You think of the monsoon as an ocean with the tide increasing and decreasing. And it rolls in from the south and slowly spreads across, and it gets deeper, it gets shallower. There's day-to-day variations, the amount of moisture. Sometimes you get so much moisture that you're really not going to get a whole lot of thunderstorm activity because it's so wet that the atmosphere gets kind of congested, and as soon as you start to try to form some storms, everything clouds over and you lose your surface heating from the sun. So those are our two main sources of moisture, though, from the south, Gulf of Mexico from the southeast, and Gulf of California from the south.
Wow, okay, so even landlocked in the Southwest, we still get our good sources of moisture, just as Jim told us. And I just, Mr. Bryce was commenting to me, just remember, please, if you have any questions for Jim or the rest of the panel, to post those on Facebook or on Twitter with the hashtag Monsoon 2017, or on YouTube. Any one of those will work. We'd love to hear from you. And look at this panel of meteorologists just waiting to answer your questions. So you should ask. Clay, Albuquerque has a very large forecasting area. So obviously Jorge has a lot of viewers watching right now. Are there any specific areas that tend to flood more than others in Albuquerque's forecasting area?
Yeah, absolutely. We can get flash flooding anywhere across the northern two-thirds of New Mexico, but generally speaking, it's easier to get flash flooding in the Albuquerque metro. Part of that has to do with the layout of the city, how everything kind of slopes down to the Rio Grande. But most of that is a component of the lack of soil because everything's cement, so all the water runs off. And it's a lot easier to generate flash flooding in the Albuquerque metro area than it is, say, just 10 miles to the east or 10 miles to the west.
Oh, wow, so the whole area but the metro. I imagine, Ken, that Phoenix has a lot of cement. Is that similar case there, that the metro itself gets a lot due to the lack of anything to absorb it?
Oh, absolutely. You can't discount the man-made effect on this. The countless examples of whether it's roads or the pavements. We had one situation in 2014 where in Mesa, where a pump that was supposed to remove water from one of these like storage basins was right next to U.S. Highway 60. And the pumps had been shut off for some reason or didn't automatically come on like they were supposed to. And so it's another case where it was well thought out, but the water backed up from that area and went into a whole housing development. And so unfortunately, that's a big lawsuit right now. But it's just one of many examples where man-made construction efforts have basically exacerbated the flooding threat here.
Wow, that's really too bad, actually. I expected you to make the concrete comment, but I was not expecting the rest of that. That's, again, sad. Flash flooding, not a good thing, and exacerbated by man-made efforts is even more remarkable, I guess. So Tim and Flagstaff, we talked about John earlier. In my recent memory, the 2006 flood that happened here, is there any Flagstaff flooding that you remember in your recent memory?
Me personally, no, because I'm pretty new to the area. But I have heard stories in the office. 2015, we had a couple flash floods. I know one really flash flood prone area is Antelope Canyon. Canyon de Chelly is another place, and we did have some fatalities, unfortunately, in those events. But recently we haven't had any, but I'm sure coming into monsoon season that will be changing.
Okay, keep us tuned into next year. We'll see you, and you can fill us in on that and your recent memory flash flooding. Hopefully nothing happens, though. So Tim just told me that we have a Facebook question. So Brandon asks, how can I determine if I'm in a flash flood prone area? So I'm just going to open it up to anybody. John, we haven't heard from you in a while. Maybe you want to start, and anybody else, or Reed, you can jump in after that.
Flash flood prone areas, obviously low-lying areas. That's just going to collect all the water that comes down, or any sloped areas, especially next to ravines that can spill over their banks, things like that. I have to go back to man-made things that Ken was talking about. How about new housing developments? Folks that build and they try to divert an arroyo or a dry river wash and say, oh, we'll just revert it over here and let's build right here. Well, nature will put that dry wash back where it belongs, right through that housing development with your higher end flash flood scenarios. I had to throw that in because I've seen that happen several times. And also, see, I'm collecting notes that I wanted to bring up here.
Oh, keep going.
I can't believe Ken or Jim did not bring up that awesome name that Arizona has for if you drive past a barricade and get caught in a flooded area, you have to pay for your rescue. It's called the stupid motorist law. I love that. That's Arizona. And most of the cities represented here, by the way, by these folks have had major flash flooding. Las Vegas, Albuquerque, El Paso, Tucson, Phoenix. It's amazing. Flagstaff, oops, I can't think of one recently, but I'm sure your area is just full of that kind of stuff. And then the burn scar. Believe it or not, we've had to issue flash flood warnings when only a quarter of an inch of rain was expected if you get your worst burn scars. That's not very much rain at all that can lead to flash flooding. And finally, for Jorge, when he lived in the Austin area, is that what you said? That's in the middle of what they call Flash Flood Alley.
Whoa.
You know, from San Antonio up through the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yes, they get incredible flash floods there. So it's not just the Southwest, but ours are easy to underestimate because it doesn't take maybe as much of rain in a short amount of time, maybe an inch of rain in 15, 20 minutes or so compared to 3 or 4 or 5 inches. So someone moving out to the Southwest from there thinking, oh, hey, we don't have any problems here. Oh, think again. Okay, I probably didn't answer your question, Marissa. I just had to cover that.
I already forgot it because you talk so much, but that's okay. You wanting to say something. What is it? Is there something you wanted to add? Reed? Nope. Okay, I thought you wanted to add something. John, you made me forget my other question. Dang it. Oh, so Ken or Tim and Flagstaff, can you guys expand upon this "you must pay" stupid motorist thing? This is so for anybody watching that thinks I'm not going to listen to these amazing meteorologists who have told me for the last hour not to do anything, turn around, don't drown, just like it says behind clay. I decided that my truck's big enough. I'm going to go through the water. So what happens, Ken? What happens, Tim? What is this rule?
Yeah, my understanding, it's well known here locally in Phoenix, and every monsoon season, it's usually addressed on the news, and whenever we get into a flooding situation. But to tell you the truth, I don't believe there have been many actual incidents where they've actually gone after somebody. That's what I've heard, but yeah, it's true. It's because it's sad. Not only are you endangering your own life, you're endangering the lives of those responders, and that's a really serious thing. We've got these firemen being hoisted. I don't know what you call it. Where they drop down from the helicopters. They're risking their lives to save someone who just ignored the rules, or maybe went around a barrier, or just didn't have that situational awareness. And it's just going to happen every year here. And I don't know what to say. We just have to keep banging the drum to make sure people understand that there's a real danger in crossing those fast flowing waters.
I know what you should say. You should say, turn around, don't drown.
That works. That fits.
That's what we're going to preach during the flash flood season, during the monsoon season. I'm so glad you touched upon the first responders. My brother's a first responder, and it just kills me thinking every time that a natural disaster happens that he has to go out and save somebody else's life. And then my family, we have to kind of group together and make sure he's okay and that the family he saved is okay. So yeah, you're not just risking your life or maybe your kids' lives in your backseat, you're risking another family's person. So think before you act and turn around, don't drown, especially, so that nobody has to lose their life. So we have 7 more minutes. Tim, Bryce, do we have any more questions from Facebook, YouTube, maybe Twitter? Hashtag Monsoon 2017.
No, we don't have any. We had Gil from Shiprock was saying another howdy to Jorge. So Jorge is quite a follower.
Yeah, Jorge, you're going to be on every day next year.
Hey, I did want to. This isn't that important, but I did want to mention that if you go over to Twitter right now and type in hashtag Monsoon or Monsoon 2017, Twitter will add a nice, pretty little blue umbrella to your tweet. So I thought that was kind of cute. It actually, I think it's not so much for the Southwest monsoon, but for the monsoon in India. A worldwide kind of company, but it is something fun. So if you want to tweet about the monsoon, you just tweet hashtag with a monsoon or monsoon 2017, and they will automatically add that little blue umbrella.
I can tell you Facebook's not doing it because I tried.
Nope.
So Tim, since I have your ear and you're speaking, let me ask you, how do we use social media or any avenue to warn the public about flash flooding?
That's a good question, because the Weather Service is just still fairly new to social media. We've been trying different things. I'm looking forward to this season. We have permission to use Facebook Live and Periscope as a test platform. So we'll be using that this summer. So hopefully we can incorporate that into our flash flood operations. But I really like the instant availability that we can send information out. We can show radar pictures through Facebook and Twitter, give people just information. And that's really what it always comes down to, is giving people information to help them make the wise decision. And as we mentioned, sometimes people make the wrong decision and they go around barriers, they put themselves and others at risk. But like John mentioned earlier, sometimes they make the right decision. And we want to help. We in the media and the Weather Service want to help people make the right decision. So if they can have all the information, if they can see where it's raining, where there's a problem, and they can just avoid that area or know that the water is coming, if we can provide that via social media through a tweet or a Facebook post or a Facebook Live broadcast, something like that, that's what we want to do. We want to help get the message out any way that we can to help save lives.
Very good thoughts. I can't help but agree. Everything that we put out here, the Weather Service, between the flash flood watches, the flash flood warnings, any kind of information that we disseminate, is all to protect life and property and help people make the right decision and save their family and their person. So we only have 4 more minutes. That's how much we've been talking and learning about flash flooding. So I'm going to go down the line and just ask everybody quickly to say something, either a safety tip or something about flash flooding that that really emanates with them. So Clay, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, let me say 2 things real quick.
No, say as many as you want. Go ahead.
As we're talking about flash flood climatology in the desert Southwest, it got me thinking, one thing that makes us really unique here, and I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbors to the west as well, is our flash flooding is correlated to the monsoon. If you look at the flash flood climatology, a large majority of our flash flood events, and I haven't run the numbers, but I'm guessing it's 90% or more, happen during the monsoon. So we have a strong correlation to the monsoon. The other thing I wanted to comment on is kind of an interesting little tidbit. It feels weird to be talking about flash flooding right now, because for the past 2 days in Albuquerque, we've had a dew point depression of 102 degrees. And for the people that don't know what dew point depression is, that's the difference between the ambient air temperature and the dew point temperature. So we've got a record dry air mass over New Mexico right now. So it's kind of weird to be talking about flash flooding, but I know it's coming. You just have to wait a couple weeks.
You just said it. It happens during the monsoon, so it's bound to happen as soon as the monsoon kicks in. You're right. It is really weird. It's 104 here today in El Paso, and it's like, really, you're talking about water right now? Really, I'm dehydrated. So I totally get it. But a good reason we're talking about it now, so that people are prepared. So I'm glad you were here, Clay. Thank you for joining us. And now to Jim from Tucson.
I just want to bring up something about Jorge. I want to say thank you. I believe our most important partnership by far is with the media, especially our broadcast media. And if we put out a perfect forecast, if we put out the most accurate warning in the world, if nobody knows about it, it's worthless. So just say thank you to Jorge and all the people that we have here in Tucson as well for the partnership we have with you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So Jorge, thank you for joining us. And Jim, thank you for joining us. I saw your face yesterday, but you didn't stay for the lightning talk. So I'm glad you joined us today. And John, before you say too much, I got a question on Facebook that asks, when does monsoon season start?
Monsoon season started yesterday, June 15th, and runs through September 30th. I know, Marissa, you wanted me to sing Yesterday by the Beatles. No, I'm not going to do it. Okay, and the thing that I would like to mention is during droughts, you can have flash floods. That's one of the Texas sayings. You can have flash floods during droughts. So that's takes people by surprise a lot of times, because let's say you're well below normal in precipitation, and then suddenly you get a surge of moisture. Maybe it's the remnants of a hurricane that is no longer a hurricane, but its remnants are coming up to your area. You're still going to get the flash flooding, and that just kind of throws a lot of people. And then finally, Jorge's first television job out of college was here in El Paso, and most people don't know that I personally trained him, even though he's an Aggie.
Okay, Jorge, pretty much I'm in your, I went to school with you, so what do you have to say to that? And John, thank you for joining us. Before you go, Jorge, thank you for joining us, John, and thank you for taking time from the shift that you're working, covering someone's desk to do this. We really appreciate it. Okay, Jorge.
What was the question? You were breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, I don't listen to John. Going to text is the best thing ever. And if you had anything to add to the flash flood discussion before we go.
Okay. Yes, actually, I have a couple of things. One being, as you were mentioning earlier, give the most forecast, precise, nail it. But not only if viewers or if people in your area don't hear it, that's a problem. Also, if you can't say it correctly, if you can't disseminate the information in a way that resonates with viewers, that's another issue. And that's something that we in the Weather Enterprise have been trying to work on over the past few years, not just the Weather Service, but also local media and emergency managers, talking mostly about impacts, significance, what actions to take. I've been doing that a lot more recently, as opposed to just talking about the numbers and the amounts. Because sometimes viewers, they don't get that. They're like, okay, we're going to get a quarter of an inch of rain. Big deal. But if you're talking about how much you're going to get in a certain amount of time and what that means to you, that's one. The other thing, and it's something I do a lot on social media, and that is sharing video and photos from viewers. And that's something that I ask viewers to do. Help us tell the weather story, because we can send out warnings via text, via radar, which is important. But it's not until a viewer sees that storm, that wall of water, that lightning strike, that tornado, where really it's like, okay, this is serious. We got to take action now. So those are the two things that I would like to say. And I think we're doing a lot better of showing that for the people, our viewers, in your case, the people you forecast for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Talking about the impact and building the relationship with the community in our forecasting area has really helped, I think, educate more people. And as we develop those deeper relationships with our emergency managers, I hope to see that for all the monsoon threats, that all the numbers will go down in the future. So very, very good addition. Ken, anything to add?
Three things real quick. Okay. I caught the tip about Twitter, so I just had to test it out. And yes, I got the blue umbrella. Thank you. And secondly, just to respond to your request for a parting shot there, one thing a lot of people don't realize is you can have flooding and it's not raining where you are. That's something that we see here in Arizona a lot. And in fact, that Apache Junction original incident that I mentioned, that was the case. The helicopter's flying and there's no rain. The rain occurred 10, 15, 20 miles away up in the higher terrain. And that water came down and flowed through. And then the third thing is, most of you probably don't know, I also went to Texas A&M.
Oh, I did not know that. Yes, Ken. This is awesome.
Only 1 year, but it still counts.
Hey, we'll let you in. Okay, Reed, what's your last parting words for us from Las Vegas?
Well, I just wanted to bring up hiking and camping safety as well. We do have a lot of impacts, we have a lot of hiking out in our area, all throughout the Southwest, and we do have issues. Antelope Canyon was one example. We have Red Rock Canyon just outside of Las Vegas here, and that floods on a regular basis. And it's really important for both park officials and visitors to be really aware of the forecast and be prepared and know what to do in case it does flood. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention was we had a dew point depression of 108 just before I walked in here. It was 107 and -1.
Oh, man. Okay. Tim and Flagstaff, I'm guessing your dew point depression isn't that big, but I'm sure you have some parting words for us.
I do. It was close yesterday. We were 83 over -15, so it's pretty impressive. People in the office were saying it's one of the biggest depressions they've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah, just to back up what Reed was saying, Antelope Canyon, I think just educating our partners and educating the public. We're actually next week meeting with the tourist industry up there and developing maybe a better plan of warning them as far as flash flooding, because it is a big issue. But yeah, I think just be cautious and extra cautious when it comes to flash flooding. There's no reason to risk your life driving through a flooded roadway.
Very good. I couldn't help but agree. So staying weather aware and turn around, don't drown, huge things that we've gone over tonight. I wanted to thank the panel. I tried not to talk too much and let you guys answer the questions. Those people on Facebook that asked the questions, thank you so much. Clay, Jim, John, Jorge, Ken, Reed, Tim, Bryce, thank you so much for allowing me to do this tonight. Tim and Flagstaff, I really appreciate everybody joining us and letting us go over a couple of minutes. So this wraps up Monsoon Awareness Week. That doesn't mean that the threats are done or that you shouldn't keep learning. We encourage you, please, to keep monitoring all of our social media feeds, our websites, everything to stay weather aware, because it's really important that you make the right decision. Like John Fawcett said, like Tim said, it's not worth your life to just risk during weather at all. You can be late to work. Everything will be okay. Just stay alive. The big thing tonight, though, turn around, don't drown. Yesterday when thunder roars, go indoors. So those two big things take away. I guess thank you for joining us, and we will see you next year.
Bye.